In this AMA, the question is, in a training block where lactic power and endurance on the rower is priority for the client, on days during his usual training week where he is completing resistance training, should his resistance training be low in volume, high intensity, or high volume, low intensity? I just get a bit confused what's going to cause too much fatigue, take away from his recovery. Lactic rowing intervals later in the day, earlier in the week, etc. Okay, I'll go over some principles here. These are the things you think about when you want to do concurrent methods of training, conditioning and strength in the same area. You have to say, what is the kind of conditioning that we're doing? So lactic power into lactic endurance is considered intensified conditioning. So therefore it answers the question of the other characteristics of resistance you should be doing at the same time. It should also be intensive in its characteristic and how it's expressed. Okay? This doesn't mean you don't do some volume work, but it's mainly intense training at the same time in which you're implementing a true priority of improvement from lactic power to lactic endurance. Okay? So I hope that made sense. If that didn't make sense, go back and rewind this video and listen to my last 30 seconds and you'll hear it again and it'll make sense. You also have to think about these other things when you do that. So these are a little bit more nuanced, but I don't want to not give you those nuances and color to this answer. You have to think about mechanical fatigue as well. So for example, if you're doing some heavy bending, it's very possible that you might be able to do some rowing lactic endurance after the heavy bending. If you do some intense heavy squatting, you may not be able to develop as much power from the knee flexion that's observed in the concentric action of the rower after that heavy squatting. So I just gave you some examples there. You need to think about the actual patterns of movements that you're doing on the same day you're doing the LP to LE in the rowing, and then just make sure that they don't have this interference effect based upon the mechanical fatigue. Okay? Some other things you want to think about. You want to say what's really priority. Is strength priority or is lactic power, lactic endurance priority? And that's how you design it in the week. Okay? It's also based upon how people recover from it, but let's just be honest, how you design it in the week is based upon priority. In most cases, these are best practices and principles. When people do true LP to LE, you not only want to have it on the same week every week so they can learn the metabolic imprint that gets in place over a period of time, you also need to recognize that as we increase time and we go from 40 seconds to 60 to 90 to 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, that's really hard on the CNS, right? It's really hard metabolically. So you have to recognize that you want to have at least this 36, 48, maybe even 60-hour window of recovery between that LE session and something else that's somewhat challenging. So this is the simple answer to that. Just in principle, always put LP and LE training at the end of a training session and always put it prior to a rest day. Really simple way of looking at it. Okay? So I answered the question in terms of where it is. It's in intensity. I also said with color, think about the mechanical interference you could get with the training you're doing along with the LP and LE work on the rower, right? Think about mechanical overload. And then just remember that days prior to a rest day is probably the best place to put it.